Is it working okay? Thank you. I'm here today with Hanuman and with Badri and Bharati, and welcome to all of you who are here and also online. This is a wonderful topic, very seasonal in a way, because we're all preparing for the physical, what was the physical appearance of Jesus in the world at the Christmas time. But more importantly, we're also preparing ourselves always for the appearance of the Christ consciousness in our own lives, and that's really the message of today's reading. A wise athlete works out, eats right, prepares for the big event, trains, takes care of their body. A wise singer reviews the music, warms up, sings, practices, and does all those things necessary to keep ready for the concert or the solo or whatever's coming up, but not waiting till the last minute. A wise student does the reading, goes to class, studies, talks to others about the class material, and is ready for the pop quiz whenever that might come. Well, we learn here that the wise virgin in this story is the one that pays attention to her devotion and to her lamp, especially keeping it filled with oil for that time when the bridegroom or the Christ consciousness is going to come and make an appearance. And this story is really kind of a very interesting one because it really represents for all of us that desire and that necessity to really always be prepared for whatever life brings us, because we never know what's coming. We're in a waiting game in many ways in life. There's very little we can control, and things come to us, wonderful things come to us, challenges come to us, and we can either ride those waves of the ups and downs and be at the crests of the waves or at the nadir of the experience, or we can learn how to surf and get through those experiences. So the wise among us are prepared for these contingencies. These things are going to happen in life. But the ones I mentioned, the singer, the athlete, really pale in comparison to the Christ consciousness that we're all working towards attaining and are preparing ourselves to be ready for. This parable was given by Jesus in answer to a question: when will we see you again? His disciples knew he was about to leave, and they said, well, when will we see you again? And his answer was, you know neither the day nor the hour when the Savior cometh. And that's true of everything in life. We really know nothing about what's really coming to us, and we're learning through our life experiences what to expect. But I wanted to look at, being a history buff a little bit, I looked into a little bit about what was this parable about, really, because Jesus used common everyday experiences of the people that he spoke to relay important teachings. He talked about lilies of the field. He talked about the fig tree. He talked about shepherds and lambs. And he talked about wedding ceremonies. So I wanted to see, well, what was this wedding ceremony like back then? Well, it turned out that back then the Jewish law had what was called a patrilocal system, which means, and this is still in effect in a lot of countries in this world, that the bride would move into the home of either the father of the bridegroom's father or of the bridegroom himself if that was nearby. So there was a procession the evening of the wedding or the day of the wedding when everyone would go. The bridegroom would lead a procession to the home of his bride and go and retrieve her and take her back to the father's home. And that's where the wedding would take place. And at this procession were people carrying lamps, carrying torches, carrying various things. It was quite a scene. And they would go and retrieve the bride and bring her back to the home. So these virgins were actually like bridesmaids, and they were often in reality the cousins, the friends of the bridegroom, people important to that person who were going to fetch the bride and bring her back. So I thought that was a kind of an interesting twist. So in talking to his disciples about this, this was something they could all really relate to. That we can't let our guard down. We want to be part of this wedding. And in the parable, those foolish virgins that had let their lamps burn out, it's funny, they actually asked the ones that had oil, can we borrow some of your oil? Can we have some of your oil? And their answer was, no, you have to go to the market now and get some. So the foolish virgins went to the market to get some oil, and by the time they came back, the procession had completed, the doors were now closed, and Jesus actually says to the foolish virgins, I don't even know you, which is kind of a harsh reckoning in a way for what they had not done. But basically, they had not received him, in the proper way. So they were closed, and that was the result of that. Yogananda explains this parable, too, as the lamp symbolizing the outer trappings of the church, of the practices, of all of the form and substance, that's the lamp, which everyone had. All 10 of them had the lamp. And the oil representing our devotion. And in our purification ceremony every week, we have the ghee, which represents that fuel, that devotion, and the wick actually representing our heart. So it takes the devotion of the oil to ignite our hearts, and the lamp is merely the casing for that. It's what houses it. So if you have no oil, you just have the outer trappings. You just have the form, but not the substance of what makes it important. Just like we say in Kriya, in our Kriya practice, Kriya plus devotion, which is that oil, is like mathematics. It cannot fail. It requires those elements of devotion, of self-offering, of being ready, of being wise at all times. So we offer that purification. We offer ourselves into that expectancy. And I was thinking as I walked up here today, and asking if we were awake and ready, that Yogananda, how important that was that he started every service with that. How are you today? Awake and ready, because that's that openness, that's that wisdom of being open and receptive, so that God can work with us. It takes that quality for us to be able to be molded and worked with, and that expectancy that something good is actually going to happen. Now, also in this parable, it talks about that all 10 of these virgins got drowsy because the bridegroom was delayed, so they fell asleep. And what I find interesting in that is it kind of represents that even the wise virgins fell asleep, so that even those among us who are conscious in many levels can find ourselves drowsy, lazy, and letting that oil burn a little low. So it's kind of a nice reminder to always kind of be aware of our own lamps and where are we in this whole thing. You might say that the foolish virgins failed, but really we know better, because it says, Swami wrote in this passage, that eventually we're going to get there. We are going to get there. The Bhagavad Gita provides a lot of encouragement for us that, you'll never really fail. And I know a couple talks ago, I talked about how kind of our lives are a little bit like a GPS system. That when a new soul comes in, we say, okay, well, how do I get to the final destination, or God? And we program that in, and it's like, okay, you start at point A and point B, and it's a straight line, and it's 10 miles or 100 miles, and it'll take you 30 minutes or something to get there. Well, we realize along the path that we're going to hit traffic. So there it is. Now it's 40 minutes. You can see it on the GPS. We have to take a detour. Now it's another so many miles. And that's kind of what our life and lives are like, our future lives are like. We're constantly being redirected through our own error, through circumstances that happen to us, whatever that is. But we're going to eventually get there if we keep that lamp lit, and we know that we will. Swami says in this reading, "Grieve not if you feel you've been foolish. No error is forever. Someday, if you keep your lamp lit now, your opportunity will come. Eternal hellfire is but a vindictiveness of the human mind." So how do we become like these wise virgins, ready and prepared at all times for whatever life gives us, but especially with an uplifted consciousness, which is what we're talking about, so that we can deal with these things? How do we do that? Because we're basically like we're wired to succeed, through our astral body, through our chakras. Our practices all involve bringing that energy up through the chakras, burning up those little seeds of karma. That's why we lift our hands at the purification ceremony up to the Christ center, which is here. We're moving that energy upward and dissolving those little seeds of karma. That's our self-offering. That's that fuel. That's our devotion. That's bringing those things up. Every time in life that we're having a loving thought, that we're happy, that we're non-judgmental, we're serving others, energy is moving up through those chakras. We're actually kind of adding fuel to our tank, as I see it. And every time, conversely, that we're kind of in angry, that we're judgmental, that we're harsh, it's moving downward through the chakras, and we're making a withdrawal. We're using that oil. So it's constantly like an up and down motion, and also a filling and an emptying of our tank. So being uplifted, our practices all involve focusing here, bringing that energy up. Our lives involve more and more bringing our energy upward. The fact that you're here today is a testament to the fact, like Rose said last week, Master often said, it takes very, very, very good karma just to want to know God. So you've all been doing this a long time. To be sitting here today on a Sunday when there's 100 other things you could be doing, and when most of the world is doing other things, here you are. You have obviously been through many past lives where it's brought you to this place right now in this moment. So give yourself some credit. You've got some fuel in your tank, so that's a good thing. It takes willpower, positivity, it takes practices, it takes a lot to get to that point, of complete surrender into Christ's consciousness. When the times get tough, are we going to be ready? How are we going to react? How are we going to break? Are we going to break in direction of uplifted consciousness? Are we going to break in downward movement of consciousness? Probably a little bit of all of that. But we know that when we're around great souls, and we've had a lot of folks at Ananda Village recently, and among the communities who are the original founders have passed on recently. We've lost some great souls who came to Ananda in the late 60s or into the 70s, and now are aging and have passed away. And it's always a situation when we see their lives and we look at their lives and we watch their astral ascensions and their slideshows and reflections on their life of what an amazing journey they've had, and how they had their fuel, that lamp fuel lit, and their lamps lit, that they were ready usually in amazing ways for whatever God had to give them, including the most difficult challenges, and even serving and offering right through to the end of their lives. And these are the examples that we have of the wise virgins, of those that through practice, when the rubber hits the road, they were prepared for the final tests. Rose told a story last week that really inspired me about a woman that she had met Rose was our minister. She works in hospice, and she often is dealing with people in transition, and she mentioned a woman who had an angel behind her in bed, a big angel figurine, and this woman wasn't necessarily on any particular path that they at least had discussed, but Rose just found her very inspiring, that every time someone would come into the room, this woman was grateful, was smiling, was happy, and here she was at stage 4 cancer in the last days of her life. And how that person made such a mark on Rose, and she could take that as a success story of someone who had fought the battle and had come out the other side and was ready for whatever God had to give her. And I found that just really, really inspiring. Now, we all have faults. We can choose to focus on them, which, who wants to do that all the time? But there are steps we can take, and one is meditation. And a lot of you are meditators or are taking classes in meditation or even practicing. If you haven't meditated for a while, it's quality, not quantity, especially just to make that effort to sit down for 5 minutes, because that opens that receptivity up in each one of us and allows us to receive the Christ consciousness. That's what meditation's all about, is receptivity. It's sitting there in expectancy that something good is going to happen. Another thing we must do is enjoy ourselves in everything we do. Swami Kriyananda used to always say that you must enjoy yourself in everything. And I had the pleasure to hear him many times speak. And he could speak for 2 hours, with no notes but there was always a lot of laughter during his talks. I mean, we always enjoyed hearing him and laughing with him, and he loved everything that he did. And even at the end of his life, when he was frail and had so many physical challenges, these were the most productive years of his life in many ways, where he was writing screenplays and rewriting books and still writing music in his mid-80s, and he was on his way out, but he was going to go out in a blaze of glory, and his tank was full. There was no doubt about that. And the third thing is, do not resist or resent anything that comes to you. I shouldn't be doing this. This isn't mine. This is not fair. That kind of thinking that kind of gets us hemmed into this victim kind of consciousness. Yogananda once said something quite daunting about this. He said, no matter where you are nor under what circumstances God has placed you, you must not resent it, for there will come a worse fate. I know. And he's just, putting it out there that we have alternatives. We can go in one direction. The energy could go up through the chakras, or it can go down through the chakras. We can make a deposit or a withdrawal of karma. A friend of mine, to prove this point about resenting it, it's not mine. A friend of mine moved to Ananda years ago, back in the 70s, had come out of school, was a real brainiac, manager-type project manager. And he moves to Ananda, and the first thing they do, they put him to work, and they put him in the copy center at the Crystal Clarity, at the publishing house. They put him just making copies. And he's doing this for like a week or two, and it's like, wait, I've got so many more talents than this. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm like better than this. He had started getting this thinking, like, why am I just making copies? I could improve this, and I can work on that. Well, he's continued on, and while he was doing this, though, he was surrounded by great souls, and he was meditating and getting the teachings, and week after week he would make copies, and eventually he found himself one day just welcoming making copies. He said, he finally realized, I can do this. This is my lot in life, and I'm going to make the best copies I can make. Well, the next day, the manager came and said, we have another job for you. And, that interesting that he finally was free of that karmic test. Like once he accepted what had been given to him, he could now move on and move forward in his life. So openness and acceptance of whatever God is giving us is really critical. And then finally, come from a place of relaxation and expansion in life. Our expression here at Ananda is say yes to life. That's about as expansive as you can get, right? Say yes to whatever is coming to you. Try not to just automatically say no if somebody asks you to do something that's challenging. And we often get asked to do things that are outside our comfort zones. This is a great training ground here at Ananda, because we're often asked to do things that our ego doesn't feel like we're prepared for. But we have to trust the process and say, well, there must be some reason I was asked to do this. I've never done this before, but I'll give it a go. I trust the process. I trust the people who are asking me to do this. If you don't work through this relaxation, then you're going to find yourself tense. You're going to find yourself trying to force situations to happen, and you're going to try to use the ego to force things instead of being kind of that co-creator or co-conspirator with God in your life and allowing God to work through you. And that's the process that we're talking about. If we're asked to do something, we have to trust that there's some reason that I'm the one that's been asked to do this. There's a story that I heard from one of our other ministers, Dr. Emoto. I don't know if any of you are familiar with him. He wrote the book Messages from Water about the water crystals, and there was a movie, What the Bleep Do You Know? That was out about 15, 20 years ago. It's a long time now. And he spoke at East West Bookshop years ago when I worked there with Surendra. back in Mountain View. But he, if you're not familiar with him, Dr. Emoto was a scientist, and he would look at water crystals that had been subjected to various sounds, to various music, various words, and he would see the effect of the environment on these water crystals. So he would play Mozart or Brahms, and the water crystals would be beautifully shaped, or he would play some really dark heavy metal, and they would be like all misshapen. And well, the same thing for words, you know, he like hate or whatever, it would be all distorted, or love, peace. And if you remember, people were buying stickers like crazy and putting them on their water bottles, you know, back at that time, and maybe still are, so writing words on your water bottles. And if you think about it, our bodies are 80-90% water. So if you really think about it, if we are subjected to these negative energies or negative thought forms, patterns, we're water. You know, look what's happening to our cells and our structure, you know, if we're in that kind of environment. Well, he did an experiment, and he put the word "do it," kind of this command. He subjected the water to do it. And the molecules were misshapen. And then he subjected it to let's do it. And they were beautiful. The water crystals were beautiful. That this was a cooperative effort. It wasn't resistance, and it wasn't this commanding, mandatory type of thing. So it's about no regrets and no desires right now. Try to just live in that flow of cooperation, of saying yes to life. So be in the present moment. Yogananda said, if you have joy in the present, you have God. So that's really about being right now, right here. No regrets, no desires. So in conclusion, as we move forward and put forth our best efforts, just do the best we can. You know, we often say, I think it was Yogananda that said, a saint is just a sinner who never gave up. So don't give up. Your GPS will eventually get you there. There's going to be a lot of detours. There's going to be fits and starts and traffic, and accidents are going to happen. But do whatever you can to keep that lamp lit. Think positive thoughts. Meditate, do the practices, relax into life, be joyful. Do all these things. Come together in satsang, serve others, think of others, pray for others, all of these things. Energy is moving up through the chakras. You're adding to the lamp of your devotion every time you're doing those things. And if you do that, then the Christ consciousness, not only the baby Christ, baby Jesus is coming to us, but that consciousness that Christ had and all the great ones have is coming to us. And that's why we're here. That's really the whole reason we're here. So thank you, and happy Christmas to everybody. And I'm just going to end with a talk, with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. Number 109. Demand to be kept ever awake and ready. O Father, if thou wakest me, how can I ever sleep again? If sleep should steal upon me, wilt thou awake me? The terrors lurking in the dream jungle of life are now forgotten. My sorrow has, by thy grace, been changed into tears of joy. All my tiny emotional joys blaze into bliss. My body temple is filled with thy light. Its rays keep the eyes of my wisdom from drooping. I thank thee, Father, for keeping me always awake and ready. Om, peace, amen. Now we'll have some more music.